So today's all about the quadratic formula. Let a, b, and c be numbers, and ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Then the solutions of the equation will be found by the following. If we take the opposite of b, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, divide everything by 2a, we're going to get our two solutions, whether we are left with a square root of 3, whether they're going to turn out to be integers, or whether we have some i's. This is a no-fail process to figure out what our solutions are. And we're going to practice. We've got 3x squared plus 8x equals 35. One of the requirements that we need, though, is in order to do quadratic formula, we need to start out with the standard form of an equation equal to 0. Bad thing about this one is the constant's on the other side. So I actually have to move the constant to be on the same side. Whoops. There should be an x there. So I'm going to move 35 to the other side. Let's actually map out what our a is, what our b is, and what our c is. Off to the side, leading coefficient is 3. The linear coefficient is 8. And the constant term is negative 35. I'm going to copy down the quadratic formula before I perform it. So, first thing is I want the opposite of b. Opposite of 8 is negative 8. Square root of b squared, so I'm just going to put in 8 squared minus 4 times the leading coefficient a times the constant negative 35. This will all be divided at the end by 2 times the leading coefficient. Now it's order of operations. I'm going to have to do all grouping symbols first. Grouping symbols, exponents. So we get 8 squared becomes 64, but I've got negative 4 times 3 times negative 35. That should become a positive. Okay, positive 420. That's all going to be divided by 2 times a, 6. So the square root of 484 is 22. And then I'm actually going to go through the motions. Take a negative 8 plus 22 and dividing it by 6, and then negative 8 minus 22, dividing it by 6. Those are the solutions to this formula. Notice if we had to do the multiply add method or the bottoms up, if you took 3 times negative 35, do we really want to deal with that? Next example. It's got to be in this form before we can assign what the leading coefficient is, what the linear coefficient is, and what the constant is. As long as all terms are on one side and zeros on the other. So I noticed that my quadratic term is here, and I like dealing with a positive leading coefficient. So I'm actually going to get everything to the right side. When you take negative 5 to the other side, we get 18. Since I have all coefficients being even, let's divide them all by 2. Divide each term by 2, we get x squared minus 6x plus 9. Let's go through the motions of using the quadratic formula. Leading coefficient after dividing everything by 2. Leading coefficient now is 1. Linear coefficient's negative 6. And our constant's 9. So opposite of b is positive 6, and then I'm going to take negative 6 squared minus 4 times a, c. Negative 6 squared turns into 36. Minus 4 times 1 times 9 turns into 36. And it's all going to be divided by 2. So I've got 6 plus or minus the square root of 0, all divided by 2. Square root of 0 is 0. So if you took 6 plus 0, you're at 6. Divided by 2 is 3. So one of our solutions is 3. And if you took 6 minus 0, wait a second, we're back at 6, divided by 2. This is an example where we actually only get one solution. Let's say you didn't divide every coefficient by 2. If you would have used A to be 2, B to be negative 12, and C to be 18, you would still come out with the same conclusion that there's only one solution and it's 3. Next example, negative 2x squared equals negative 2x plus 3. So before I start, I need to make sure I get every term on one side. I notice my quadratic term is negative, and for some reason in my head, I hate my quadratic term being negative. So I'm actually going to move this guy to the other side to make it positive. Negative b means I want the opposite of your b coefficient. So hopefully your b coefficient is negative 2. When you plug it in the formula right here, I want the opposite of negative 2. So I'm coming to a red flag. I've got the square root of negative 20. So this is where even i's will be showing up in the quadratic formula. The I came from this square root of a negative. Anytime you have the square root of a negative number, we need to represent it as an I. And wait a second. Notice every coefficient. I've got a 2, I've got a 2, I've got a 4. All of these coefficients are even. If I break them up into 2 fractions, and pay attention to this, if you break it up into 2 fractions, meaning taking this numerator piece divided by the denominator and this numerator piece divided by the denominator, you can reduce the fractions. Two fourths, I'm looking at 1/2 plus or minus I root 5 divided by 2. I could either write my answer like this or have everything being divided by 2, meaning this is another way to write the answer. Homework. 5 problems. It's 33 through 41 odd. It's problems 33 through 41 odd on page 295. 33 through 41 odd, page 295. It's just practicing that quadratic formula. And ladies and gents, let me stress to you, the more you practice, the more you are going to get that formula memorized.